Hello, and welcome to today's broadcast on driving outcomes with DaaS and Lifecycle Services, brought to you by Insight. Before we begin, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. This webcast is designed to be interactive between you and the presenters. The webcast console you are looking at can be completely customized. You can resize or move any of the windows you have open. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. All questions from this webcast will be captured and our speakers will answer throughout the presentation. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please visit the webcast help guide by clicking on the question mark icon below the presentation window. The help guide covers common technical issues. I would now like to turn over the presentation to our speakers, Adam and Harjo. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, world. Thanks for joining us here. So today, you'll be speaking here with Mr. Harjo Sidhu. My name is Adam Duffy. I'm a product manager here at Insight. I focus on end user experiences and compute, and I'm happy to have you all here today. Harjo?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Harjo Sidhu, technical architect here at Insight. Really heavily focused on product lifecycle, movement of goods, inbound, outbound, workflow, optimization, automation, integration.
So real quick today, so there's a lot of content to cover for DaaS in general. What we're going to try to do is just focus on some key components here, so to really highlight the main objectives and outcomes. So we're going to start with the million-dollar question, that is, what is DaaS, device as a service? Then we're going to go into the general business industry market challenge, and then we're going to go into Insight solution. Then we're going to discuss the lifecycle logistics component. Then we'll delve into some personas and procurement features and options. Then we'll discuss a client story, and then we'll open it up for some questions. So thank you very much. We'll get started. All right, again, that million-dollar question, what is DaaS? So DaaS, device as a service, has grown past a buzzword, really. It's evolved into a solution with a common theme, yet a variable definition among providers and clients. Providers may define it according to their strengths and capabilities, while clients may define it according to their needs. There really is no right or wrong definition, rather only a solution that has landed and works between the provider and the client. So thinking about that, so Insight has a definition, and I'll just go ahead and read it off the screen here. Device as a service, DaaS, is the ability to manage the full life cycle of a device by combining its procurement services and management, end-of-life recovery and refresh into a seamless end-to-end experience with a predictable and management payment model. Okay, and there's a couple key components we're looking at here. We have devices. You need to have a device, obviously. So laptops, desktops, and the type of device may vary. So you have that device, and then what are we doing with that device, and how are we making it usable? So by having a IT lifecycle management that includes the setting it up, the deployment, the provisioning, the deployment, and then eventually the management of those end user devices. And then we have, what are we going to do with those devices when they have been used and their life cycle is over? Well, having a end of the device lifecycle support built into the program is something that's very important. So at a high level, what we're seeing here is there's three main components we're covering, and weaving those in together, it can have a lot of logistical challenges. And so that's why device as a service has so much value, is when you're able to boil that down into something that has a beginning and end and a manageable model, is why device as a service is really something that's been created. That's it at a high level. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to delve into, but do you have anything to add to that, Harjo?
Yeah, I mean, if you as an organization assess your current setup today, you'll probably notice that the equipment and the services and the other subcomponents are highly fragmented within the organization. So you might buy the equipment kind of one-time purchase over here, warranty might come from here, services are being purchased from over there. Some services are being done internally with personnel that probably have better things to do, as an example. So DaaS really is about, eliminating that fragmentation of the hardware, the service, and the subcomponents that go along with it, not to mention the accessories.
Great, totally agreed. Okay, let's talk about some of the problem that we're trying to solve here a little bit more. So here's some of the top business drivers for DaaS. We'll start with some statistics here. So 71% of organizations are still trying to accommodate for the hybrid model. All right, and just to that, taking that point Harjo made, it's very fractured, and so this can lead to an increased device management complexity. All right. What about 44% of employees are saying that the workplace technology, it's not really enabling their job satisfaction, and sometimes in many cases it can even make their jobs harder. And so those two, and especially in today's climate, retaining talent and being effective with the resources available, it's important to land a solution there. And some of the top 3 reasons organizations might choose DaaS, their teams don't be overwhelmed or they're spread too thin, and they want to go and open up that bandwidth so you can refocus those IT resources to more strategic projects. And you also have growth that you want to boil into your device plan. So being able to scale your hardware needs over time, and also to stay up to date with the different hardware choices. Another thing that's really important to mention is, what about the option of a CapEx or an OpEx option? So there's clear cash flow benefits when you're able to move to an OpEx model. It provides much lower upfront costs while still achieving the IT outcome, and also a simplified billing structure. And when you add in the potential options for leasing, that adds more possibilities as well.
It also accommodates the ability to distribute that recurring cost into under cost centers, right? So again, almost like a subscription model that can be, sent out to the actual sub-organizations and the individuals that might be leveraging that hardware and service as well. Probably the key thing I'd want to focus on this slide is obviously around the hybrid and remote element that is now prevalent within the industry. And that makes things in this area extremely difficult, right? So you might have been able to keep things together as an organization when everyone was centralized in offices, but once everyone scattered to their homes, things became a lot more difficult to manage. And so this is a lot of the driver behind the recent uptick in terms of DaaS interest and capabilities.
Great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about DaaS Lifecycle. This is Insight's DaaS Lifecycle solution. We see some extra add-ons and components there. So there's a lot to cover on this slide. I'm going to just go through it at a very high level just to lay the foundation here. So this is a core service, and there's a lot of out-of-the-box benefits that's based on this definition of DaaS that we talked about before, and we've applied it to our extensive suite of services. So first on the list here, we have under the DaaS lifecycle, we have this section called Procure. So procurement, the first item there is contracted discount on devices. So instead of having to constantly investigate and negotiate pricing, it's done strategically with our team for long-term results. Our clients know that they're getting the best deal on devices that work best for the needs each time they place their order, and this can save some valuable time and effort. Next to that, we have an e-commerce portal. So being able to customize for our clients' needs with easy access to the models that they need when they need it. That e-commerce portal makes that possible. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the e-commerce portal a little bit later. Next section we have is prepare and deploy. Zero-touch provisioning. This getting set up with modern provisioning solutions such as autopilot and folding it into the device prep sequence, it can save a lot of time, save tons of time. Sometimes clients may still require traditional legacy provisioning, such as imaging or domain join. We have that included as an option for clients who aren't ready for modern yet, but this is also folded in as part of the process because we know that there is that need sometimes. Warehousing. So next on there, we have, as part of procuring devices, clients will need a place to store them. So having just-in-time inventory ready to go and directly accessible by our integration center services team, it can solve many logistic problems for our clients. After that, what about once we deployed it, what are we going to do after that? So Depot Lifecycle Services, we have end users actively working on their devices, but things go wrong. So boiled into the program are advanced exchange, rush deployment, and retrieval events to land at that solution. And again, as Harjo mentioned, this as a service subscription, consolidating all of these services into a predictable payment structure that's ready for refresh cycles. So now we hit that end component. What are we doing at the end of that device lifecycle experience? So got to keep the business going, keep it running. So that's built into the program. Anything on those, Harjo? I have a couple more items I'm just going to really briefly go through, but anything on that core component?
No, I mean, the main theme of this is that the primary services that are incorporated into the DaaS, the main offering from DaaS is around the movement of those devices, both outbound and inbound, to our depot facilities as well. But there's key auxiliary services, those add-ons that are very common, that would be of strong interest as well, that enhance the service even further. I'm sure you're going to talk about that now, Adam.
Yeah, just real briefly here. Each of these topics you can talk for a long time on, but I'm just going to really just mention them. So, for example, you can go from DaaS Lifecycle, which is that core service, and add on DaaS Complete, which is really adding on managed endpoint. And this is really being able to manage those devices. We have support platforms like Intune, Workspace ONE, Jamf. So some of those top platforms we can work with, and this can support extensive device types as well. Then, but there's a lot of different services that you might need to supplement the core service. Integration services, we might want to do some kitting, asset tagging, laser etching. We have options built in there. We have service delivery management. Maybe in a global scenario, you want to have some high level expertise applied to help manage those complex processes across the device landscape. And then we also have modern enablement services. Maybe you want to get modernized and you want to be able to have a more efficient process. We have services to help land that and build that up. We also have managed deployment. There's you can coordinate your entire rollout all the way to from beginning to end. Tech Hub. So being able to have those sort of those user initiated knowledge share experiences, or to be able to get that automated IT support. We have that built in. That couples really well with service desk, having that call-in structure to get those to have those end users supported. And of course, asset disposition. There's all kinds of different ways you can dispose or recycle or reuse those assets, but having that as an option depending on your needs is also built in there as well. But as a whole here, we have it's an evolution of a package solution that streamlines the client device lifecycle experience and gives you options to how you want to land it your way. Harjo, anything to add?
Nothing further on this slide. Thanks, Adam.
All right. Okay. So very briefly here, so we talked about some of the statistics before. 71% of orgs are still accommodating hybrid work, and 44% of employees say that they're dissatisfied with technology or it makes work harder. Plus, some of the top reasons for why an org would choose DaaS. So just hopping through here, we have configured out of the box, just being able to turn on, an end user can turn it on and start being productive, on-time delivery. We have direct to end user with a great first impression and ultimately a high employee satisfaction. We have reduced deployment costs, which is the overall challenge of staffing and delivering. And on deploying a catalog of devices, it's streamlined and simplified within an experienced partner. We have reduced IT resource demands. So across the device lifecycle, an org's team is freed up for other initiatives. Optimized device management. So for managing endpoints to device repair and exchange, the execution of the day-to-day device needs, it can land in a smooth operation. Anything else to add here, Harjo?
Yeah, I like to just talk a little bit about the on-time delivery, because that's been a big focus with some of my recent clients in particular, where they have a strong focus on the hiring date for new employees, for example. So you have visibility onto the hiring date, and what we're able to do with that client is we're able to optimize the speed of preparation on the insight side, in addition to the speed of the actual shipping to the end user, not just to ensure that it arrives with that new hire right at or before the new hire date, the start date, but also to reduce their costs, right? So all of a sudden, if things are last minute, clients end up having to pay more for the rush activity and the overnight shipment using FedEx or UPS or others, for example. And so we're able to work with clients very effectively, not just to ensure that optimal new hire experience, but also to maintain their lower costs from a deployment perspective. So that's been a lot of fun exercise and kind of an algorithmic approach with our clients to ensure that that is being done in the best possible way.
That's great. Thank you. All right, I'm actually going to pass this on over to Harjo. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Adam. So again, this is a visual representation of apologies, a visual representation of a lot of what has already been discussed in terms of this conversation. But a couple of key items I wanted to focus on: service delivery management on the top left there. The SDM is a core functionality when programs may get complex or large scale. A good example would be a global program that might be in place. So they're an excellent component of the DaaS offering to ensure that the onboarding, setup, management, reporting activities are as positive as possible. Then following along in terms of this end-to-end process that you might be seeing here, starting with number one, some of the key items I wanted to highlight here is around selecting an option of devices. So based on user profiles, I think Adam's going to be talking a little bit more about that in a moment. On to number two, a key item here is around forecasting and ensuring that there is sufficient supply based on anticipated future demand. So I think the recent significant challenges around supply chain are starting to ease, but doesn't mean it's completely gone, right? So again, working with the clients on ensuring that there is sufficient supply, very, very important. On to number three, we're going to be talking a little bit about the portal experience, that single pane of glass customized experience that'll be available to our clients. So again, we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. On number four, when it comes to pulling the devices, key item there is around the scale to which Insight can manage deployment. So again, we have multiple facilities and able to scale to essentially any size deployments, even if doing just a massive refresh project in the hundreds of thousands of devices, or smaller scale activity where there might only be 2 or 3 orders every week or two. Right. Finally, in terms of number five, we're going to be talking about, we've mentioned already, around increasing that employee experience, that end user experience, giving them an excellent, out of the box, activity off that device. On to number six. So number five represents the end of that outbound experience. And historically, that used to be the end of that process. It was kind of a fire and forget. Prepare the device, get it out the door. We never need to worry about it again, but we continue to be involved. So on to number six and number seven, where sometime later with that device, there might be a breakage event. There might be a problem with that device. Obviously, our service desk can be involved in determining if that issue can be resolved. Or a replacement is required, in which case we have an advanced exchange capability, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And finally, on to number seven, at the end of the life of that device, right? Not just knowing when that device needs to be refreshed or brought back into the facility, or when an employee exit occurs, but also monitoring from a lease date perspective if these are leased devices as well. So again, that retrieval capability on those assets, because frankly, there's still value in that equipment, not just from a monetary perspective, but also from a security perspective. So again, recovery of that equipment, a key component of this offering. So on this slide, we talk a little bit more of the details around the outbound activity, the pre-deployment activity. We did already talk about that with the previous slide that had the icons around that positive experience from a client. But this is a really critical capability because of two main reasons. When you deploy a device, when a new hire, for example, is getting a piece of equipment, there's two things that you want to focus on. Number one, you want to ensure maximum productivity as fast as possible. You don't want them sitting there waiting for a piece of equipment. You also don't want them sitting there trying to prepare their piece of equipment or calling IT to try to have it set up properly. So number one, ensuring that they're as productive as possible, as fast as possible. And number two, increasing their satisfaction with that experience. So, you can do things like charging the battery, installing it in a case, kitting it with accessories, maybe throwing in a welcome package. We've had some clients that throw in a fancy schmancy backpack, give that new hire a real warm, fuzzy experience. And so all of which can be accommodated with our outbound services and really has a positive effect from the end user perspective. Adam, anything to add?
No, poetry. Thank you.
And then finally, this slide talks more about that advanced exchange motion. So again, lots of things can happen with that device while it's out in the field, not just from a break fix perspective, but perhaps from a refresh perspective as well. And you're looking to bring that old piece of equipment back in. So again, key component here is to reduce and minimize the downtime for that user, right? They shatter that screen, they break that device, or it's not working, they are down, and that is a very expensive prospect from a client-facing perspective. So we get a replacement out to that user same day, next day SLA. So this is an extremely powerful offering. And so a new device goes out to that user, again, fully configured, fully kitted, ready to go. And that user is up and running as fast as possible. Along with that outbound shipment, we're also including a return label to bring that old piece of equipment back. And as you can see here, as it loops back in, every device that comes back gets triaged. We attempt to try to recover it. We determine if it is perhaps no fault found and it can return directly into good stock, or we have to put it through a repair process with warranty or out of warranty. Or finally, we do determine that it is due to business rules or the state of the device or the cost of the repair, it is not recoverable, and then it goes into a disposition process. So again, one of the add-ons that's available is around disposal remarketing activity, and all of a sudden you can start recovering a little bit of that money as well from that piece of equipment, but also ensuring the security with certificates of destruction and recycling that's available. So very, very powerful offering here in terms of advanced exchange, very fast, to be able to ensure that your users are up and running and again have that positive experience. Adam, anything to add?
Nope, that's great. That's great.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to getting a little bit about the personas feature that we have. So one of the things I like to highlight is that Insight is vendor agnostic. So you can select a device from various different vendors, and this kind of makes us a unique device as a service provider. So once you have a catalog of these pre-selected, you have the catalog of these pre-selected choices, and through the planning process, you can create these personas based on your organization's needs. And there's devices that fall into those sectors. And through planning, you can have the option of a guaranteed price per persona as an outcome of planning. And this can provide simpler accounting, easier ordering, and for long-term management of what happens when these when refresh happens or rollouts. You know what you have, you know what's available, and it's all consolidated for it's very predictable. Now, part of this, once you select these devices, is where are you going to be ordering them? Well, we're talking about having a customized e-commerce portal experience. So part of this, you have catalog customization. So you take all the established personas and devices and you make them available in a simple online experience. But what about the device selection process or approvals? So no two orgs are really exactly the same, and different orgs, they may have nuances in their protocol for these approvals, but we can apply these customized workflows that fit the client's needs and standards within your e-commerce experience. We also have e-procurement integration. So getting systems in sync with our client systems, it has tremendous value in providing immediate visibility and insights for our clients. So in general, having a place to come and order that's customized per your need, per your plan, and it takes that fractured environment that Harjo mentioned initially and boils it into an easy place for you to go and select and acquire your devices and send them on out. This is just a key piece of the experience. Anything to add here, Harjo?
Yeah, I mean, this is also a fantastic location from a reporting engine perspective. So a lot of very powerful reporting built into this console and this portal, not just on-demand reports in PDF and CSV and Excel format, but also scheduled reports that are outbound. So all shipping activity, all invoice history. So a lot of it being built in here, which is very powerful. Outbound catalog feeds to your internal systems, if that's desired as well. So if you have an internal portal and catalog, the feed out of this system can be automated. APIs that are available to create the orders and get status on it, including the serial numbers and tracking information. So a really robust and powerful procurement engine that's available to our clients.
Thank you. Okay, so a little bit of DaaS in action. What we've done here is we've taken some of the challenges from a client, and we're just kind of going to explain kind of what that experience was like here. So what we have here is a client that had some of the anatomy of what we see here. They had about 15 billion revenue. Just give you an idea of the kind of size of the client. They had 8,000 global locations, over 20 countries, with over 4,000 devices in the fleet for this solution. And some of the challenges they brought to us, they had an overburdened IT team. They couldn't focus on these priorities like we talked about. They had difficulties managing the devices and the end user compute on a global scale. And they just needed somebody who was in a strategic position to help improve this end user experience. And honestly, they just wanted to get out of the device business. They didn't really want to have to deal with that part and have that be set aside resources for that. And so they also had some specific parameters. They had a 90 to 120 minute average device setup for new hires, and that was just really not very efficient and costly. And they're also struggling to effectively support this remote work search. So again, we're talking about that hybrid work challenge and accommodating that. So being able to meet all these needs, these are some requirements that we had to kind of come and solve for. And so on the solution we provided for them, it was a customized DaaS solution that had global leasing, and they had day one support through the tech hub. So having those that day one receipt of the devices to those end users, we wanted to make sure that they had a quick solution for any of those little nitty-gritty problems they might have on day one. We also provide managed endpoint, and this included ongoing monitoring, and we actually used Jamf and Intune for that solution. And overall, this is a 3-year lease program that we did for them. They had dedicated program management, and the leasing was available in about 17 countries at that time. And so now they had about 90% of their devices were Windows-based, about 10% were Apple, and currently most of those Apple devices were in the US, but they were planning to go globally with that. And so that's kind of the anatomy of the problem that we were trying to solve for. And here's some of the results. So they ended up getting a lot of greater visibility across your device fleet. So again, you have those reporting capabilities available, so you're able to see exactly what's happening with those devices, where they are, and what's keeping them up to date. They also had a much improved device turnaround time, and they had new hires across US and EMEA districts. They had reduced workloads. They had improved end user experiences with better devices, reliable devices, and they're able to control this device spending because again, with the leasing, they had predictable payments, and that's a really important thing. If you talk to any sort of a CTO or a CFO for that matter, and they're going to really appreciate having those costs ready to go, and they know exactly what they're going to be each month. And also, of course, strategic support for these anywhere digital work environment. So again, being a solutions integrator and to support those experiences puts Insight as a unique provider for such a solution. And again, you can see some of the comments that we have there. Just the experience is a lot better. Before DaaS, they would take too long to get these things. Now it's much less. And they were able to improve a process that affects every new hire in the company. So again, that new hire experience, being able to get that out quickly and get that user up and working productive without all the internal strife, all the internal attention you have to pay to those details. You can let a provider like Insight handle those things, and that shows right here with the kind of experience that this client had. So at a high level, really just talking about the experience, you can as a potential client for a DaaS solution, you can think about some of these high-level components and how your organization may face these challenges, and then apply some of the outcomes of this experience. Maybe you see some of the results that your company can have by consolidating all this, having one hand to shake to cross all these different services and device choices, and reduced cost structure. So there's a lot of benefits to it. I hope that we touched on this and the level that maybe rings some bells for you, but we'd be happy to go and delve deeper and solve your needs for you on an independent way. Anything to add here, Harjo?
The only thing I wanted to mention is around that comment around 90 to 120 minutes, right? Being eliminated for the setup process for the end users by using Insight. So obviously with a legacy system like SCCM, Microsoft SCCM, where imaging is required, that benefit is quite obvious. And that's something that Insight has been doing for a very, very long time, and we continue to do today. However, that time benefit still is applicable even if you move to autopilot. So the automated enrollment process, while streamlined, is not necessarily fast. right? So again, that initial boot up experience for the end user, if bypassing a white glove experience from Insight, still going to be very time consuming due to the OS updates, due to the applications being downloaded. So again, even in the realm of modern management and autopilot, the benefit of using Insight to prepare those devices and do white glove is still highly relevant.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's all we have for our slides on this, but I do believe that we have some next options. I'll go ahead and pass it on over.
Thank you to our speakers for this session. Please make sure you register for our upcoming webinar sessions in our Power Modern Work series. You can find the link to register and watch past sessions on demand in the widget on the right side of your screen. If you have any questions or would like additional information, please visit our website, solutions.insight.com.